Okay, so I've hit recording here. Good afternoon, at least Vancouver time. My name is Julian Dirkes. I'm an associate professor at the University of British Columbia at the Institute of Asian Research. And this is a bit of an experimental and thought piece blab. And I'm joined by Lotus. Lotus, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Julian. I'm also a student at UBC at Institute of Asian Research. I'm a master's student, so I've been very interested in social media and the application of it in various settings. So I'm very happy to join Julian on this panel or this blab to talk about why we are interested in, social media and video chatting. Hopefully, we could draw some audience.
Excellent. So my interest really in playing around with Blab has been a long-standing interest in the use of social media for communicating the results of academic research. That I recognize that we often have an obstacle in bringing the results of our work, of our research to the public, but sometimes even to colleagues, and a desire to experiment with whatever technologies might facilitate that. How about you, Lotus?
Yeah, so my interest actually started with Periscope when I was sort of video taping one of the panel discussion we had at UBC. And unfortunately found it out that it only lasts, you could only view it after 24 hours. So after 24 hours, it would be deleted. And then Julian introduced Blab to us, which you could record a video and then join by another Twitter Blab user. So this is a pretty good way to start kind of a remote discussion on various topics. I also tried Blab because I think it's a very conversational way to introduce some ideas to general public, whether it's academic or business. You could always, reach to different audience on a larger basis,
right?
Rather than just physically sitting at a panel discussion. So that's why I'm interested in Blab and other video chatting forms.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about a couple of different aspects of this format, right? That makes us curious. I think we're both curious, but sort of in different ways, right? So one of the starting points for me is that as social media and as use of the internet is developing, we keep returning to the power of visualizations or of visual imagery, right? I mean, this is much before your time, but when I first got online, it was Gopher, right? So it was all text, and then the first web pages were really text-based. But since then, every evolution we see a bit more video in there, right?
I think that reminds me of one of your previous long time ago at APM. You talk about digitalization of academics and knowledge, which I think is very important in this age because, like you said, I think just text-based article is not enough for spreading knowledge, whereas video is more direct and straightforward, and visualization I think is the future as the to go for academics. If they want to reach out to a broader audience.
Yeah, I think that's right. And as much as it doesn't always come naturally, because that's not necessarily how I learned or how I even use the social media and the internet myself now, I recognize that that's one avenue to reach a whole different kind of audience. And I don't think the audience is always just defined generationally, that it's particularly young people or not, but some people just prefer this sort of format, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I think has us both curious is the informality, right? That this has sort of a feeling of a conversation in the way that, I mean, some of my recent interest has also been sparked by getting into podcasts a bit more, which I don't generally listen to music or so I'm not really accustomed to running around with earphones. But there's some podcasts I'm quite interested in now that are professional, and then some of private interest. But it's this interaction and this chat. I think the discussion between two or more. I guess we could be up to 4 here. Right, yeah. That offers a different perspective on a topic than if I was just writing or if I was recording. And so it's part of that is that informality, isn't it?
I agree. I've actually tried to record a YouTube video before. And as we have seen a lot of YouTube video, they value a lot of After Effects and also the audience would expect high quality of the video. Whereas Blab, we sort of expect that it's going to be a low quality video and focus more on kind of the interactions between different speaker and the audience, and also the content rather than just, the after effects itself. So in that case, Blab is more time efficient than YouTube and, like you said, podcasts and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if surely we're doing this in amateurish fashion now, but if we got to hang a little bit more of the software, this is really easy to set up, right? Whereas you mentioned earlier that we've done videos for Asia Pacific Memo or so, and then we're always concerned about, is our camera good enough? Is the resolution good? What's the lighting? What's the background? I mean, this is my random background. You've got your random background. But I think you're just right that the expectation from potential viewers is a different one when this is really just sort of a casual video almost that's hosted in some ways on Twitter, and that's part of the joy of it. But it doesn't need that full production value, right? We can just be a little bit more ourselves and focus on the content.
Exactly. And the fact that I'm using my cell phone now tells much of it, right? And also I like Blab because you see a lot of audience are chiming in, although they're not raising questions for now. But I suspect, unlike YouTube, it could generate kind of the real-time responses from the audience so that we could always follow up if we are not making ourselves clearer enough. So this is one of the, the plus I think Blab has. Yeah,
so it's a combination from, if we'll say a little bit about the end of what we sort of imagine we might take this, but it's a combination of a scheduled session that people could conceivably join, and one would hope they would, and it'd be more interactive, but then offering that recorded version as well that allows us to build a sort of a menu of different discussions and events in the same way that podcasts often do, right?
Exactly.
And hope ideally, we've had all this discussion in the last 2 weeks about the death of Twitter, but that's a topic probably for a different day. But the integration with Twitter and being able to tweet out an invitation and then also to tweet the URL means that it maximizes sort of visibility through that medium as well, hopefully.
Exactly. I don't think Twitter is going to die, but the integration platform would kind of make it a continuous technology that more and more people would use and get used to, right? And like you said, we could invite up to 4 speakers on one Blab panel. So that kind of, we don't have to consider time and space, which is pretty awesome, I think.
Mm-hmm. So you want to say a little bit about how you might want to use this in the future and what you're planning? You mentioned your YouTube channel. What are you planning there? And just say a little bit about that.
Sure. I'm actually starting my own video channel with my friend. We're going to talk a little bit about Chinese social media in particular. Sort of our prospective audience is sort of foreign business people or academic who want to research on social media, Chinese social media, or get into the Chinese market via social media. So we're going to offer our experience and tips on using Chinese social media. So stay tuned. I think I'm going to tweet about the video via Twitter. So my Twitter is lotus_RUAN. So you guys could follow me on my Twitter account and, stay tuned.
Okay, that sounds cool, Lotus. Look forward to seeing some of that. For me, I've got sort of a different directions that I could take this in that I'm considering. Substantively, there's 2 areas that I'm particularly interested in. One is contemporary Mongolia, and so I could do a focus on that in different formats. The other is that I've also been very interested recently, actually sparked originally by Greg, who's listening in, but been interested in digital diplomacy, and so the extent to which governments, particularly the Canadian government, reaches out to stakeholders using social media. And so this is perfect for that because it's using social media, right? But the formats, so those are sort of the topics, but the formats I have in mind specifically for Blab are a couple different ones. The first is this sort of podcast-like planned session that where I invite a particular person, Lotus today, and say, okay, next Tuesday at 4, I'm going to talk about the upcoming parliamentary election in Mongolia, and here's my 2 or 3 guests, right? So it's nice for that because it would allow me to invite very distant guests potentially, right? So if you're interested in contemporary Mongolia, there's not that many of us in the world, and so that's an advantage because I have very few people locally who want to talk about that necessarily. So that's one option. The second is that's something that Lotus and I tried at an event before, actually, which is almost a reporting from academic events. And so to think about if I'm at a conference or somewhere else, I can just step out in the breaks and say a little bit about what the panels are about and what lessons I'm drawing. And it's a way for me to share that, but also to record it for myself. So that's another option. And then the third would be to actually integrate that into the planning of events, right? To both broadcast potentially a session, although I don't know if many people will be interested in hour-long blabs. But definitely to think about if we've got a speaker coming to campus, for example, to go ahead of time and say, okay, speaker here, dear Jane, what are you going to talk about today? Can you give us the 3-minute version as maybe a teaser, or to integrate with live Twitter, with live tweeting or anything like that? And so those are sort of the ideas I have in mind. If anyone out there ends up watching this and is curious, easiest way to follow me is at jdirkes on Twitter. That's JDIERKES. If you're interested in the Mongolia bits, you can search for Mongolia Focus, which is a blog that I run with some graduate students here. And if you're interested in the digital diplomacy piece, stay tuned. There'll be news in the coming months that will have a little bit of a platform for that. And in the meantime, you can read, for example, I just had a piece last week on Open Canada with some graduate students. So that's at opencanada.org. If you search for me as an author, you would find it there.
That's a neat piece, by the way. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I enjoyed it very much.
Good. That was fun to do. So thanks for chatting today, Lotus. I'll turn the recording off now.
Thank you.
All right.